Hi, my name is Daniela, and my group and I are discussing material culture and non-material culture. The subject of culture is super complex because when we think of culture, we tend to think of a stag force. However, the purpose of this video is to provide a perfect definition of culture by talking about the difference between non-material culture and material culture and breaking it down for you. We hope that this lessens the complexity of the subject. When we think about culture, we tend to think about material culture. These are things that we can touch, use, and see. And non-material culture, these are things that we are invisible but very much real, like religion, language, values. That's all part of non-material culture. But then the reason why we thought it was important to talk about this is because material culture represents more than what we can see and touch, because access to a computer, let's say that's the culture of the Western world, computer. So access to a computer represents a certain class of wealth, represents, because computers come with internet, that represents the value of access to information. All this is part of a culture, because cultures do change, right? And in many cultures, access to information is very important. So with that said, we also want to help you understand why it is that people pay more attention to non-material culture than they do to material culture.
So in material culture, we're going to talk about how the norms, rituals, beliefs in various cultures are different. With the Chokoshi culture, someone was banished from the community to pay for the crimes of their relatives, specifically the girl child.
So that shows us, symbolizes how in Western Africa, they believe in rituals such as the girl child, taking care of their sicknesses, challenges, to mention but a few, as a family. However, in places like East Africa, we can see that when something goes wrong, in as much as some small communities may resort to witchcraft, the greater part resorts to God. That's why there are so many churches in East Africa. Africa, to be general, but in this comparison, yes. So in East Africa, it's mainly churches. In other parts of Africa, it's like the Chokoshi culture, it's the girl child. Yes.
Then there is also collectivism and individualism. So in African culture, the entire family, the extended family raises a child, even the neighbors. Everyone has a hand. However, in the Western culture, it's more like the husband and the wife raising their children. And that shows how together and one African culture is. So that's a behavior they have. Like all of them are one.
When it comes to immaterial culture, the examples that we mainly focus on are the intangible aspects of culture. That is the values, the norms, the beliefs of the society, the things that cannot be touched. A good example that we can give is marriage in the African culture. When a man wants to marry a woman from a particular African family, he is required to pay bride price to the family of that girl that he is going to marry in exchange for her. Another example that we can look at is the Muslim and the Christian community. Muslims, when it comes to marriage, Muslim men are encouraged to have more than one wife, while in the Christian society, it is not allowed for a man to marry more than one wife. Another example we can look at is the way of dressing in the Muslim society and in the Christian society. The Muslim women are required to cover their body fully and let only their face show, or for some of them, their eyes only. Whereas in the Christian community, it does not pay so much attention to the way of dressing, just as long as it is decent in the eyes of God. Another thing that we can look at is the different cultures and their staple foods, especially in the African culture, where each tribe in a particular country has its own staple food and their ways of dressing, their different attires of dressing. Yeah, those are some of the examples that we can use to describe immaterial culture. The things that the things that people believe in and the values and the regulations that people are required to follow when it comes to their own culture or the society that they are in.
So, as you heard from my friend, each culture group has their own way to represent their culture through symbol, music, food, or even artifacts which have different meanings. But we live in a world which become more and more interconnected, and intercultural communication happen all the time. From when you travel to a new country, from when someone comes from a different country, or even when you change location in your own country. And there's that phenomenon that all happen all the time, which is cultural shock. So what is cultural shock? Cultural shock is the experience of being unfamiliar in a certain social norm, or experiencing new food, new way of life in a new environment. Personally, coming from a different country, Kenya was a new experience for all of us. As a student, as a tourist, or even as a business person. The difference was in names, in gesture, in food, language, or even the most common thing, what we call matatu za rongai. And we are so disoriented, but with that, still with that openness to learn new things.
Like George Santayana said, there is wisdom in turning as often as possible from the familiar to the unfamiliar. It keeps the mind nimble, it kills prejudice, and it fosters humor.
Intercultural communication and interaction can help us create just great sense of togetherness and learn from each other. So let us know, what is the most typical thing you love about a new culture? Thanks for watching. Peace.